And we are live. I don't know who is already ready and who's sitting and joining us at this moment just yet, but we're here. My name is Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick, joined by my wonderful co-host Scott Matla and our wonderful third co-host Ian Boisvert, our honorary co-host. And we're all here to recap the trade deadline. I think we wanted to start talking about the Habs first, and then we're kind of going to talk some winners and losers, laugh at some teams we don't like. But first, Scott, how are you, and how excited are you that Ian is back with us today?
Well, I'm super happy that Ian is here, which is always the best part. I have been driving around since 7:45 this morning, like trying to keep up with trades while I'm visiting accounts and doing other things, and it is just a lot happened, but it all happened kind of in like the span of, a short window. Everything happened the previous 2 nights, like it does every year, where a lot of just big trades happened. I'm glad it's over with because it's just more focus on the prospects and the rest of the season and everything now. But man, is it good to finally just we don't got to talk about who's getting traded, who's getting out of the lineup, this or that. We can focus on the Montreal Canadiens, which may or may not be better or worse than anything else at the current moment here. So,
And Ian, how are you on this very busy, busier than expected trade deadline day?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I really didn't anticipate the Canadians doing anything today. So the fact that they did one thing is one more thing than I expected them to do. So yeah, gave us something to think about, something to talk about. And like Scott said, it sets up the rest of the season where I'm sure a lot of us will be white knuckling over draft lottery standings and worrying about every every loser point we pick up between now and mid-April. So it'll be a nice stretch run. It's kind of crazy to think about how quickly the season has gone. Like I feel like I blinked and it's March. So we only have a few more weeks of Canadians hockey left, for better or worse.
I'm just tweeting out the show, so you guys keep talking, and I will weigh in with my initial thoughts in just a moment.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess like we'll start with the Habs kind of side on this because, this is a Canadians podcast, and then we will make fun of everybody else as we go here. And I guess we should start kind of where this whole deadline started with Sean Monahan, where Kent Hughes got 2 first-round picks in acquiring one player and trading him, which is honestly pretty impressive work just across the board. That took on a first, got Monahan, took the risk of bringing him back for this season too. There wasn't a guarantee after his injuries, and then they turned around and flipped him for another first-round pick to the Jets, which looking like it'll be in the mid to late 20s, but what are you going to do? It's another first-round pick, and that I think is arguably the best move that Kent Hughes made for this whole trade season. I don't think that's really overly arguable at this point, but quiet deadline, but the moves that Kent Hughes had to be made and made perfect sense for this team right now.
Yeah, the Monahan trade, like you said, it's Montreal really took a bet on Monahan being healthier than what his reputation had become over the years. You mentioned that the placement of that pick will likely be mid to late 20s. I think it's important to note that Ken Hughes has done a good job stockpiling first round picks. He got one for Tyler Toffoli, he got one for Alex Romanov, he got one for Ben Sherratt, and now he got two from Sean Monahan, essentially. The only one of those picks that has come to pass where the Canadians have used it on a player in the draft was that Toffoli pick where they picked Philip Meshar. The rest have been traded for NHL assets. So it'll be interesting to see, like, do they even keep this pick? Do they flip him for another that pick for another NHL ready asset? He's done the stockpiling of assets well, and he's flipped a lot of them to some levels of success. The Kirby Dach one we seem to like that one a lot.
We're talking, is Kent Hughes going to flip another first round pick that he got in a trade for an asset? And we know he loves the NHL draft. So I would like to posit on this podcast Trevor Zegras, Montreal Canadien, at the NHL. Too many things are lining up and there's too much smoke about this,
Yeah.
which means it's going to be somebody completely otherwise from the 2019 draft class. But Hughes is stockpiling enough assets to make something like that happen. But oh boy, would I think Habs Twitter would tear itself apart. The Kirby Doc trade was wild enough. Being there in person, it was wild enough because there was no working cell phone networks at the time. But everything's lining up for that. And I said this on Twitter, is that I'm very curious what a going for it trade deadline will look under Kent Hughes in the future, because he's aggressive when it comes to off-season movement and off-season work in terms of trades. And I think that's the most exciting part. Yeah, they didn't trade Savard now, but a year off his contract, cap going up, summer move. I guess the next big trade is Jake Allen goes to New Jersey for a 3rd-round pick that becomes a 2nd-round pick. And I have in front of me on Cap Friendly the conditions on that pick in 2025. It upgrades to a 2025 2nd-round pick if Allen plays 40 or more games in the 2024 season, and if the club that Allen is a member of qualifies for the playoffs. He doesn't even have to be playing for the Devils to fulfill this trade requirement.
Yeah.
They could decide this offseason they want Linus Ullmark and trade Jake Allen to another team, and there is every chance in the world the Habs are going to get a 2nd-round pick out of it, potentially. And yeah, they retained 50% on that, but that's their last retention slot for next year or for the season. But I don't know. I kind of like that. Allen hasn't played well this season, and they still got potentially a 2nd-round pick for a goalie that was surpassed by a guy who couldn't stop a beach ball in the NHL last year. It is delightful.
Yeah, and this is the thing is Jake Allen's stock had fallen so far the last, like, I want to say the end of last season and this season. And I was worried that the Canadiens weren't going to be able to trade him at all. Not that, I like him, everything like that. It's just that uncertainty in goal was getting really annoying, right?
Yeah.
And even, we're talking about a 2nd-round pick or a conditional 2nd-round pick. Like early in the season, people are like, oh, you're lucky if you get a 6th for him, right? And now the Canadiens have been able to, I guess, maximize the potential of this trade or the potential return of this trade, I think. And one thing about Kent Hughes that I find really interesting is that he's not afraid to do all of those weird gymnastics, whether it comes to retention or brokering trades and things like that. Like at some point, I start getting dizzy looking at all the conditions, like the Monahan trade, like this trade now. It's very complex. And I feel like sometimes there's a little bit of chess to be played because he knows the rules so intricately, like coming from his background. I feel like he's exploiting an inefficiency there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I do want to pause because I think the one area of this trade that I'm worried about isn't the conditions, it's not the salary, it's the retention slot. With this trade, it means that until July 1st, the Canadiens cannot retain another salary. They have Allen, they have Petrie, and they have Joel Edmondson. Joel Edmondson comes off the books on July 1st because his contract ends. So on July 1st, the Canadiens will get another salary retention spot. However, you look at their salary for their salary cap structure for next season. David Savard and Yoel Armia are both unrestricted free agents, and those cap hits aren't very pretty on either of those. Joel, I feel like Savard's for what you get from him is a little bit better, but if Yoel Armia doesn't continue this rebound that he's on, we could be in trouble. And you've only got one salary retention spot left for next season. One of those guys is going to have to go without any kind of retention. Does that limit you in the value you can recoup back for them?
I had a counterpoint to that because I was thinking about that as well. Is one, the cap is going up, so there are going to be bad teams who need to hit the floor. San Jose has like 3 guys in a trench coat playing for their team right now. Carl Alsner's hit comes off the books, I believe, as well, his buyout. So there's a little bit more in there. The Edmondson one comes off, which is a little bit more than what Allen's retention spot is. And I look at it in teams in the offseason are going to be more likely to spend that money with the cap going up and it being the offseason. And I don't think Savard at $3.5 million is going to need a retention slot based on some of the things that we've seen moved. Armia is up in the air. If he continues to play well, I can see him being part of a bigger package, and maybe they use that spot on him. But
Yeah,
the biggest thing is I don't want to talk a Josh Anderson trade, but he is the one that if they're going to move that, there's no way he or Brendan Gallagher don't get moved without salary retention at this point. Like that's what I'm concerned about. And then next year, I believe the Petrie one comes off, the Allen one comes off.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, the Habs, I don't think are going to want to be using their retention spots as much because they're going to want to be buying pieces and getting other teams to retain on that. I get the concern about it, but I am not as concerned about it as when I look at overall.
Yeah.
We're going to see who's going to be dumb in free agency here for the biggest thing, because if teams are really truly like waiting to the summer to make their moves, like allegedly with Savard or possibly with what Allen was going to be doing here, I think we're going to see right after July 1st that there's going to be people going, okay, let's talk David Savard now. That year's off his contract now. He should cost potentially less. Maybe the value might change because of that year off his deal there. And as our comments put it, Christian Dvorak, which
right.
I was about to raise my hand and go, what about Dvorak?
I forgot he existed.
I know.
Sorry. I feel bad for the guy because he got put in a no-win situation to get traded from Arizona to the most hyper-intense market, not named Toronto, in a role that didn't make any sense on a team that was bad, and then just
in reaction to the Kotkaniemi fiasco.
Right. That was the only time Marc Bergevin traded a first-round pick for a player. It was the only time he moved that asset, and it wasn't even the Canadiens' asset. It was whichever pick of these is not as bad as the other one.
And we have talked about this on the show. There's another pick that was in that deal that ended up going in the PLD trade to Winnipeg. So Winnipeg has what would have been our first second-round pick this season.
Right.
The Habs, not being good, have now handed the Winnipeg Jets a top 40 pick in the NHL draft this year because Marc Bergevin was absolutely short-sighted in what he was doing with that.
He went big doofus mode towards the end of his tenure. It was just it's just gong show after gong show towards the end.
When you're doing anything to save your own job.
Yeah, and guess what? Didn't work.
You got to win games to save your job, unless you work for Vegas, apparently. So
maybe I'm off base on this, but hearing what Ottawa is looking for, they're looking for good pros. They're looking for help on defense. Doesn't a David Savard to Ottawa move just make a ton of sense this summer?
No, because then he's going to turn into a superstar every time he plays this team, and I don't want to do that.
Also, he's such a nice guy. I don't want him on Ottawa.
But who's in charge of Ottawa now?
Michael
Landauer, but David Poulin. Who was on the Canadiens TSN broadcast, and he loves him some David Savard. And I also believe that but a good portion of David Savard's salary next year is in bonuses. I believe that there's a good portion of it that's paid out on July 1st. And they can send him on his way.
Let's take a look here. I am bringing up Cap Friendly right now.
I believe it's him. There's someone on the Canadiens who has that kind of structure, and I believe it's him.
He has a $500,000 signing bonus next year, no performance bonuses. So his base salary is $2.3 million next year, 2.8 total salary.
Right, which is lower than the cap hit. The cap hit is like 3 point something. So
3.5 again, yes.
Last year is one of the cheaper years that's left on his deal. So a team that is not,
money laundering.
A team that is not struggling for cap space, but is struggling for actual money. They might be interested in a guy like Savard.
That's actually not a terrible thought. Future Arizona Coyote, or Salt Lake City Coyote, or Houston Coyote, or whatever we're calling it at this point. Someone in our comments is saying New York Islanders, which he's such a Lou Lamoriello player, but I am holding out every bit of hope in my heart that we see Josh Anderson, New York Islander, because does he not check every box in Lou's bald, festering brain of big, skates fast, physical? I don't think handsome's part of that, but it's also the part that I'm using as this sales pitch here. And sometimes he scores goals, and that is getting less and less, likely these days. But There's too many players on the Habs that I look at them and just go, the New York Islanders are going to be all over this. Like,
Would you have to take Pierre Engvall back to make that work? That contract looks like a disaster. It's only like it's not big in dollars, but like it goes on for a long time.
I am bringing that up right now. Why is he signed for so long?
But the cap hit's like 3 something, isn't it? Like,
but
it's
when
not,
does it end?
It ends in 2030.
What?
That's
He
a made up
he has a
number.
modified no trade clause throughout it. He makes
That is
flat $3
6
million
years
a
from
year.
now.
Yeah.
That is 6 years from now. That's a carry price contract.
Yeah, the
but
Sharks
without
will
all the
still be playing Thomas
success.
Hertl to not play for them.
Okay, so one, I'm gonna now go to where are the calculators here, because I did the Josh Anderson buyout calculator yesterday. I'm going to do the Pierre Engvall buyout calculator today, and it's only $1 million a year to buy him out, but you're paying him until 2036. So
that's the Bobby Bonilla life. For those who might not be aware, the Mets bought out a player named Bobby Bonilla, and every year for the rest of time on July 1st, he gets $1 million.
The
pretty
Rick
cool.
DiPietro, if you want to go back to the Islanders of all teams too.
Yeah,
that is a deep cut. At least for our age group, that's a deep cut.
Yeah.
I love Bobby Bonilla Day. It's one of my favorite things in the world, because why are both the blue and orange New York teams so bad at this?
Miserable.
Honestly, I wouldn't be opposed to taking Pierre Engvall back because he's cheaper with the cap going up, and maybe you flip him back to Kyle Dubis in Pittsburgh in like 2 years. So if Dubis is still employed at that point.
We got to get to that Gensel trade at some point. I know we're not done with the Habs yet, but
well, I know we'll touch on the last one. We talked about Jan Mysak and Jacob. I almost called him Pelletier. Jesus, I keep getting the wrong French Canadian Jacobs. I called Jacob Larson, who's not even French Canadian. Jacob Perreault. Yesterday, it's an AHL deal. Perreault isn't in the lineup tonight. There's a chance he could play tomorrow for the Rocket. It is what it is. It's a swap of magic beans and hoping it, the Rocket needed a scoring winger, not a guy who works hard. So It is what it is. I'm not saying it's going to impact the Rocket. The Rocket did get Joshua and Jaden Struble papered down before the deadline today. They are eligible for the Calder Cup playoffs if the Rocket do so qualify. But they may play a handful of games at the end of the year for the Habs too. It was a quieter deadline, but it was efficient. As Nathan in the Eyes on the Prize Slack put it, it was 4-yard check down screen passes for a first down, and that's it's not fancy, but it got the job done for what they needed this year.
Yeah, like I'm more impressed than I expected to be. I'm less disappointed than I expected to be. And I think one of the things as Habs fans is that especially in the last like couple of decades, every trade deadline and every free agent day is do something, right? And sometimes those things don't make sense, but we get excited when they make a splash, and then it doesn't pan out later or whatever. But I think this time around, I feel like everything kind of made sense for the Habs with respect to where they are. And I know our good friend JD is doing a live show potentially right now, or maybe he's done, where he told us he was going to do 30 minutes of weeping. So I feel like the Habs are kind of in a good position, and looking at all the trades that went through, it's been a bit wilder than we're used to this whole week, right?
Yeah.
And looking at all the trades and looking what all these other teams did, I'm still feeling pretty confident about the Canadiens. Like, I think that they didn't lose their heads. They didn't fall victim to FOMO. They also, like, Kent Hughes is really big on, like, I want this return and you're not going to dissuade me from this, right? So I think, like, all in all, like, as a Habs fan, I'm pretty pleased. But also at the same time, like, it's just like there's so long to go still in this rebuild. So that's the thing that kind of drives home. So yes, like, I'm not overly excited. I'm not disappointed. I'm glad that this is the management team in place.
I think, it's reassuring that it is both proactive and properly reactive, instead of something happened, here's Steve Ott and Andreas Martinson,
I was just about to ask, what's the worst deadline you guys can remember? And it's the Ott, Dwight King, Andres Martinson deadline, and nothing even remotely comes close, because every trade we were like, oh, why? Every single trade that was made at that deadline was the same 3 noises we all made.
Dwight King was supposed to be the good part of that trade deadline, and it ended up being Steve Ott, which is just
Yeah.
Oh man, that was bad. Threw away a year of prime carry price on Steve Ott and Dwight King. All respect to Steve Ott, but woof.
Yeah.
I guess we should dive into some of the other trades. And do we start with whatever the hell this Noah Hannafin trade is, or do we want to immediately go into making fun of Kyle Dubas?
I want to do both. I want to start with the Noah Hannafin trade because it feels like, let's talk about Calgary for a bit.
I
Shall we
don't.
talk about Calgary for a bit?
I mean,
There's
feel like-
there's too many things to talk about. Also, hi to our listeners.
yes, hello everybody.
We will be getting to your comments and questions soon. And Amy, you are cracking me up right now.
I feel like the Flames took up all of the oxygen in the room for approximately 3 months and then just didn't really do anything. I mean, they made like the Hannafin trades fine. It's not awesome. It's fine. You know, I think that we saw them twirl in the air for 30 minutes and then they just didn't land the dismount at all. Like it was just kind of I'm left with more questions than answers with this roster. With the direction of this team in general. Like up until like early this week, there were thoughts that maybe they might try to go for it. Like
they didn't trade Jacob Markstrom. Like
yeah, it's true.
that's the part of this that I don't get is Don Maloney stepped in and stopped a Jacob Markstrom trade to New Jersey. So it's like, what is the purpose of that? You know, like why are
we meddling?
Yeah, why are we just not doing anything at all? You know, I don't understand. They had all these pieces for it, and they seem to have gotten like not the return I think they should have gotten for that. And I think this about New Jersey a lot too. But they had all these core pieces that could have gotten them a king's ransom, and they settled for like change for the claw machine, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, if I was a Flames fan, I'd be disappointed. I'd feel like I have less of an idea of where this team is headed than I did a week ago, which is not the place that they can be in, right? Like, you know, there's not they didn't really add a ton to build around. Jonathan Huberdeau is a shell of himself. Whether or not he regains form to what he was like his last year in Florida, it remains to be seen. Like I genuinely don't know. Like that's the thing that I took away from a lot of the teams that I described as losers in this year's trade deadline was just like, where are you go? Are you coming or going? Like what's
Yeah.
going on? Like you need to pick a lane. Like the Devils are a prime example of pick a lane. Like they traded away Tyler Toffoli and then like an hour later traded for Jake Allen. Like what are we doing?
And then they traded for more goalies after. And we'll talk about the Devils in a second. I want to I have everything in front of me for that Hannafin trade.
Yeah, do it.
Okay, let's do it.
From Vegas to Calgary, 2025 third round pick conditional, 2026 first round pick from Vegas conditional. The condition on the third round pick, it upgrades to a second if Vegas wins a playoff round in 23-24. Okay, that's not terrible.
Yeah.
Conditions for the other one, if traded by March 10th, 2024, or if the pick is in the top 10, Calgary will receive a 2026 first instead. So if Vegas just straight up decides, well, we're going to trade our another first round pick, which I believe
they did, didn't they?
Did they?
In the Hertl trade, didn't they trade another first round pick?
No, because they still have their 2024 one. So they traded another one in there.
Interesting.
And then so Hannafin went to Philadelphia. Philadelphia gets a fifth round pick from Vegas. Then Hannafin goes to Vegas, and they also get Mikhail Vorobiev from Philadelphia. Vegas just did, and I'm sorry that JD and our friends from Locked On Sharks are here just in time for this. Vegas just said, I don't believe in the cap anymore, and just keeps doing not illegal things, but things that feel like they should be illegal. The Thomas Hertl trade just makes me think that Mike Grier is in so far over his head that he does not know what's going on. They got a 2025 first round pick and center David Edstrom in there. Hertl with 7 years of salary retention, and 2 third-round picks to Vegas.
That was the thing that killed me. Was I think Dreger was the one who was on top of the details for that Hertl trade first, and it was like he wrote it as like a first, that center prospect, and then the salary retention, and then 2/3. And I was like, all right, it's not much. And then he tweeted later, he's like, by the way, those 2/3 are going from San Jose to Vegas. I was like,
Yeah.
he lost the plot, completely lost the plot.
You are giving up the good asset in this. Why are you giving up even more? Like, what is going on?
Okay, guys, Connor McDavid, Edmonton offers you Connor McDavid, and you're like, no, actually, I need you to throw in 2 4th-rounders and a conditional first.
Yeah.
Don't tempt Ken Holland. He might do. He didn't do anything else today.
No,
he might
he
do
slept
something
all day.
Yeah, he slept all day after getting Adam Henrique. He had one too many, bran flakes in the morning and decided he needed a nap today. So it's like, I guess the other big trade in here, we're just going to jump right into this. Kyle Dubis might not be a good GM, everybody. I don't know if that's a controversial statement or not anymore, but I don't think Kyle Dubis is very good at this.
He loves his guys.
You didn't win with the guys in Toronto. Why are you acquiring them on an older, worse team with less talent? God bless Sidney Crosby, but Jake Gensel and Ty Smith to Carolina with salary retention by the Penguins. Penguins get Michael Bunting at $4.5 million a year, first year of a 3-year contract. Vasily Ponomarev, who is in the AHL, seems to be a potential bottom 6. Cruz Lucius playing in the NCAA. Scouts say he's got a ton of skill, but whether it will transfer, don't know. Ville Koivunen, who is lighting it up in Liga. Skating concerns on there. 2nd-round pick, conditional, that can be upgraded to a first if Carolina makes it to the Stanley Cup final. So long shot. And then a 2024 5th-round pick, conditional. If Carolina wins the Stanley Cup, they get that pick. Out of all of that, Kyle Dubas didn't get a guaranteed 1st-round pick in any single part of this.
Yeah.
And he got a 97-year-old NHL player and some magic beans.
He had the biggest trade chip this season. Yeah. He had the biggest thing to offer. Like, if you look at the potential, I guess we didn't expect Thomas Hertl to be traded, right? So beyond that, like from the players you expect it to be moved, he had literally the biggest trade chip.
I mean, from what the Sharks got, I don't think they expected Thomas Hertl to be traded. Like, on the flip side of this Gensel trade, we just watched Carolina play Montreal on Thursday. How much did a team like Carolina need somebody like Jake Gensel? Carolina is a team that will hold the puck for 58 of 60 minutes, will shoot the puck 40 times, and they might score twice. So I feel like they needed Jake Gensel really, really, really bad. It's a great fit for him.
My biggest fear was that they were going to pass on Gensel and get Toffoli on the cheap and pay, because I look at Tyler Toffoli in that, I don't want to say slow, but like methodical style that they play through the offensive zone. And I remember Toffoli being on that line with Caulfield and Suzuki and being that guy that Tyler Toffoli right now reeks of being a Carolina Hurricane.
Yeah.
And then Dubas being left holding the bag because he couldn't trade Jake Gensel. Honestly I think that would have been worse. And I think Carolina would have paid even less to get him at that point, which is wild because I don't think they paid that much. They didn't give up any of their like true like top 3 prospects in this trade. They didn't give up Scott Morrow, despite what David Pagnotta wrongly said several times on Twitter. They didn't give up Alexander Nishkinin, who was destroying the KHL, and they still got the biggest fish on the market. So Carolina probably comes out on top on that, but I think they're just going to get slaughtered by Florida anyways, because the Panther machine just go burr and doesn't stop at this point.
It's so annoying. It's so annoying at this point. But can we go back to the one thing about the LTIR and Kyle Dubas and Jake Gensel? Like, is that really a thing?
Yes. Okay. Kyle Dubas trading. I think they managed to get cap equivalent by trading away some like AHL prospects or guys who were in there, like a guy like Chad Ruedel, etc. But with that trade last night, Kyle Dubas made his team non-cap compliant because Gensel wasn't activated from LTIR before he was traded. Being tradable still on LTIR removed all of that out of their salary pool and put them almost $3 million over the cap. It is, for a guy who's supposed to be the smart one, what are you doing?
If that's the smart one, the rest of us are all in trouble.
Oh man.
I don't want to say Toronto might have been onto something, but
well, I mean, and Toronto had the guy who wrote the CBA.
Is Brandon Pridham still there, or is he with Dubis now?
He was with Dubis. I don't know if he moved on.
He was supposed to be the one, like that was the thing, because obviously we have friends that are Leafs fans, and none of us are perfect. I remember like he was the one that was supposed to succeed Dubis, like he was like the next hope or whatever, and then they went and they got Brad Treliving.
Brandon Pridham is the assistant general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs right now, just as
there you go. So like all my friends had hopes for him, but they're like, let's go get this other guy who has proven mediocrity elsewhere and insert him here.
Yeah. And bring him in, and he can't participate in the draft at all. And then he has to navigate free agency, and he signs a bunch of dudes who don't do anything for the first half of the season. Like, man, can we talk about Toronto now? I feel
like we can absolutely talk about Toronto.
I'm ready to take some punches now.
I'm just looking at the Penguins thing right now. I don't actually know if they have $850,000 in cap space. I don't know how they got under there or who they moved to IR, but they're boy, that's going to be fun. Let's talk about Toronto, Ian. Take the lead, please.
So I feel like, with and I'll talk about Winnipeg and Vegas in the sense that those are two teams that I think very acutely understand what they are and what this season can mean to them, and they bought accordingly, right? Like they are both all in on this year, and I love that. I think more teams need to be all in when they're having a good season. Toronto is getting yet again another like unheard of season out of Austin Matthews. Mitch Marner, he's been much maligned this year, but he's having a decent season. William Nylander looks great. You're getting, nice contributions from guys like Matthew Nyes. They just got their goaltending back. Wall is back. And all of a sudden, the trade deadline's here, and your acquisitions are Ilya Lyubushkin, Connor Dewar, and one Joel Edmondson. What are you doing?
I'm looking at the Leafs stat page right now on their website. Nylander's leading the team with 84 points, 34 goals, 50 assists. Matthews has 54 goals, 26 assists. Marner has 25 goals, 51 assists. And then it kind of falls off a cliff.
Right.
Morgan Riley is there, but he's
goals.
also...
Austin Matthews has 44 goals?
54.
54 goals.
At the trade deadline, he has 54 goals.
That's what I was saying. Like, you're literally wasting, like, it's like Edmonton all over again. You are wasting a generational talent, like a putz, but a generational talent.
I want to look at this, by the way, in that I know we don't put a lot of stock into plus minus for things, but you have Matthews and Marner who play together, plus 21 and plus 22. Nylander, -2. Morgan Riley, -3. John Tavares, -5. Max Domi, -2. Tyler Bertuzzi, -2. Matthew Nyes, +6, +9 for Jake McCabe. This is a team that is so built all the way around Austin Matthews.
Right.
Tavares is scoring less than Nick Suzuki this year, and Nick Suzuki is the only NHL top 6 center on his team currently right now. And Nick Suzuki is outproducing John Tavares, who gets to play with William Nylander, who has 84 points on the season.
Yeah.
Toronto went out and said, you know what we got to do? We got to get fake mad at something that hasn't happened yet. And they went out and acquired, like you said, Connor Dewar, who was a perfectly cromulent fourth-line player, and Joel Edmondson, who cannot skate and cannot do the things that he used to do. And the minute that he puts on that Maple Leaf sweater and cross-check somebody, he's going to get suspended 17 games for it.
Well, and Ilya Lyubushkin, who we already know doesn't work. Like, we've seen this movie. Like, I think Leaf fans need to take us at our word here. Like, I know the Leafs aren't a great team. They're a flawed team, but they have such a high end that, like, if that was my team, I'd be like, what are we doing? Like, can we not? Could they have not given a second and a third for Tyler Toffoli? Are you out of your minds? Like, Tyler Toffoli on the second line with, like, John Tavares would be awesome. What are we doing?
I mean, I'm actually looking. Toronto doesn't have a second or a third for the next 2 years. They don't have a second in 2020. They
Trade one in the
traded
third
everything.
year. Trade
They
one in the
traded
third year.
everything.
Make something work.
And also part of this, out of Tavares's 19 goals, 7 of them are on the power play. He's basically a sink at even strength at this point. But
Yeah.
this is a team that went out in the offseason. They let Kyle Dubas go, or whatever you want to call that. It wanted to remake their identity. Okay, you don't want to be the team that's pushed around. I understand that. Everyone's called Matthews and Nylander and Marner soft. I still think they're not wrong. Mitch Marner has the least composure and spine of any NHL player I've ever seen. And Matthews just doesn't care when dumb stuff is happening because that's not his thing. He knows he's going to be, he knows he's going to score goals and be amazing doing that. That I understand that fully.
Right.
But you went out and got Max Domi, Tyler Bertuzzi, and Ryan Reeves, and all you've done this year is get punked by everybody.
They lost
Every
twice
game.
to Boston in the last week.
Who went out and got Pat Maroon, who's going to absolutely,
oh my God.
He's going to drive the league. I don't know if they play any more games this year, and I hope they do. He's going to drive them nuts.
I need a Boston-Toronto first round like I need air to breathe.
Toxic.
No idea.
100%.
And we've talked about Ryan Reeves. Ian and I have DM'd a lot talking about the whole Ryan Reeves thing because every time he opens his mouth, he says something really goddamn stupid. And we're going to get Jack-Eye Reeves tomorrow. It's going to be dumb. Arbor might beat him up again, and he's going to talk, and they're going to... Max Domi last night was talking about how they came together as a team to not get pushed around by Boston. They lost 4-1, and the only thing they did was cross-check Brad Marchand in the throat and get fined for it.
Yeah. And in the first loss at the beginning of the week, John Tavares said, well, we learned a good lesson here. It's like, how it's the SpongeBob meme. How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? It's been happening for literally a decade. We've been learning this lesson about Boston and Toronto for 11 years.
Decade.
It's crazy that we keep, and they're going to line it up, and they're either going to get Florida or Boston in the first round, and they're going to show us they learned nothing. I almost feel bad for Leafs fans. I'm almost there.
No.
But then they're gonna say something dumb, and I'm gonna be over it. I'm like, you guys earned this. This is the team you deserve.
Yes.
In the same thing here with Toronto doing nothing to extend their windows a little bit wider. I am looking at Edmonton as a team that at this deadline I go, you got Adam Henrique, that's great. You need another defenseman and you need another winger for this team, and you did nothing to help Connor McDavid again. You are, an injury to Draisaitl or McDavid away, which I know they'll play through it anyways because people are insane, from being a non-factor in the playoff. And you didn't get a goalie. You're relying on Stuart Skinner again. Yeah. We went through this last year. Nobody learned anything from their mistakes here. It is wild. The only team who learned anything was Winnipeg, and I hate that because the coward Mark Scheifele plays for them, and I want them to lose so our first-round pick is better.
And also, they took our beloved players, and now they're tainted.
Yes, it's like Monahan, smart business. Getting to Foley, smart business. Didn't give up a ton for other players. A smart deadline.
It stinks because outside of Scheifele, I find that Winnipeg team so likable. I love Kyle Connor. I love Nick Ehlers. I love Tyler Toffoli.
That's future Montreal Canadiens Nick Ehlers, by the way, because Rick Bowness doesn't like him for whatever reason.
But the coward cancels it all out.
I'm still rooting for Tyler and Kat Toffoli always until I'm in the ground. So I find I will pinch my nose and cheer for the Winnipeg Jets this spring. But yeah, it seems like Edmonton's a great example. Antti Raanta was available for free on waivers, and they said, nope, we'll take Stuart Skinner for the rest of the year. And
part of
maybe
that might
Jack
be a money
Campbell.
thing. Part of it might be a money thing too. That it's I almost am sure that Edmonton was one of the teams that called about Jake Allen, because Allen said he had other teams that asked about him, or that other teams were involved, and he waived to go to New Jersey. I think Allen just did straight up was like, I do not want to be anywhere near Edmonton at all.
Yeah, but and that's, maybe that's why judging Edmonton on this is unfair, because we love Jake Allen. Is he fixing anything there? what the final line on Jake Allen as a Montreal Canadien was an .899 save percentage and a .330 goals against. And I know a lot of that is because he played in front of or behind some of the worst Canadiens teams that have ever existed, and that needs to be taken into account when we look at these. But like, I went to the Devils Canadiens game recently where Jake Allen played, and that was the Devils probably had a lot of eyes on him in that game, and he gave up 4, and they still decided to trade for him. Like,
Didn't the Habs win that game though?
No, they lost. They came close. Suzuki had a couple goals. They lost.
Oh, that was the 4-3 game. Okay,
yeah.
I was like, I know they beat the Devils at some point this season, but
not the one I went to. Yeah. So I mean, I think Edmonton, like, I don't know what would have fixed their problems, but it was really cool to see them just not even try. The level of apathy that there is among NHL general managers is kind of annoying. Like, well, I can't fix it, so you guys are on your own. Like, that drives me nuts.
I'll just fire a coach. Like, it's fine.
Like you're Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl, and you guys are playing out of your minds right now. Or you're Austin Matthews in Toronto, and you're playing out of your minds, and your GMs just went, go ahead, give us nothing. Like, it would drive me insane.
Yeah.
Because we talked about Bergevin for years, not wanting to mortgage the future for the core right now. Sometimes he did. And he made incredible deals when he actually tried it. He got Jeff Petrie and Thomas Vanek for nothing. And yeah, Vanek kind of waffled, but I'm going to go ahead and point out that Michel Therrien was his coach. And Jeff Petrie gave us almost a decade of service as a Canadiens defenseman. That's unheard of in the modern NHL, especially for a team like this. And then there are years that like you get the Ott, Martinson, Dwight King years, or just nothing at all. And it's oh man, I
feel like time was not kind to Thomas Vanek in Montreal. You go back and you look at the numbers that he put up while he was here, he was really good.
He was, and then Therrien just decided he didn't like him in the playoffs, and then the Habs couldn't score against the Rangers.
Yeah, the goal scoring just completely dried up across the roster.
Because Henrik Lundqvist just hates the Montreal Canadiens. So he put up 15 points in 18 games for the Habs and put up 10 points in 17 playoff games. I don't see any problems with that, but it's, oh man, all I can think is there are too many good teams that didn't do enough at this deadline. Toronto and Edmonton, the Bruins again, too, weirdly just didn't do anything. And that's going to come back to bite them on the ass again because they're not exactly a deep team right now.
Right.
And they're not having a superstar come in and save them right now.
Well, that's the thing, because like I was looking at, I was like, they had such a disappointing exit last year. Why didn't they do more to prevent that? Because I don't think they're stupid. I think they can tell. Like, it's thin, right? Like the future is not necessarily guaranteed. And so, as a Canadiens fan, I'm happy that they didn't do much to short, but like I would be very curious to see what they end up doing in the offseason, the Bruins. But really quickly, I don't know if Jay's still in the room or not, but I remember speaking to Jay of Locked On Blue Jackets about Edmonton and goaltending. Just to go back to that, there's something about Edmonton that, like, even if you're the best goaltender in the world, you go play there behind that defense. I don't know what it is, but, your game just, like, you never recover from that. So I feel like maybe that's why Jake Allen was like, nope, no thanks. Do you guys want to get to some comments?
Sure.
I was going to say, I'm just kind of looking up the standings here. Dallas, my final thought for who did well. We didn't talk about Colorado at all, but Colorado swung for the fences, and they're a team that is getting a career year from their superstar.
Yep.
And they actually went for it. They went out and got a second line center.
The Mittelstadt trade is fantastic for them. They gave up a good piece, but Mittelstadt's awesome.
And then they went out and got Sean Walker just to replace Bo Byram to make it work. And is Walker as good as Bo Byram? I don't know. That's, not my area of expertise, but they're a team that actually went for it.
Yeah.
And then you have all these other teams that went, well, there's nothing we can do. Vancouver didn't do anything. And though they're leading their division by 11 points, but too many good teams didn't do enough, I think, at this deadline. And that's disappointing for all these superstars, honestly.
Yeah.
I think the only one thing was Lindholm. So was that good or not? I know it's a few weeks ago at this point, but
they got him, and then everything since they got him has been like they're trying to trade him again. They were trying to trade. Apparently, there were talks about them trading him to Boston. and then Vancouver going after somebody else.
The rumor is that if they couldn't get Pettersson signed long term, that Lindholm was their replacement, and then they got Pettersson signed long term, and they're like, well,
We don't need this guy.
what the hell do I do with this now?
Yeah.
It's not like they gave up much. Like they gave up Kuzmenko and stuff for another trade where I don't think Craig Conroy cooked at all, but not really my problem. We have their first round picks. So
Hunter
yeah.
Krushnevich in that trade looks to be a pretty decent prospect now in Calgary. But agreed, like they have the best center available on the market, and the price on it like immediately then shifted everybody to Sean Monahan. So like you knew that he was the one to get, and they did fine in that trade. I'm very worried about Calgary in the long term still.
Yeah. All right, Laura, what do we got in questions? I guess that we
We've got
should get into some because we've got about
tons of-
15 minutes before the Rocket game.
We've got tons of comments and questions. Actually, I wanted to say hi to Randy, who made the point that the Flames don't really have a direction right now. I think that's really the concern, is not like what they're doing, but they have no identity. And then we've got lots of really fun comments. We've got a question here from Amy. You can go over 10% of the cap in the off season. So couldn't you just get the acquiring team to take him until after July 1st, and then the Habs could possibly retain? Were we talking about Savard or Army at this point, Amy? I can't remember.
Probably Savard.
Yeah.
I would imagine, but like
it
applies to both of them.
I think the NHL would say that's circumvention. You can't do that. They would be very upset. Like in this instance, like Montreal at the draft trades David Savard to another team and then trades back to retain, and then I think it would just have to wait. But it's an interesting point, but the NHL hates fun, so they would not want us to do that.
Ask for forgiveness, not permission.
Yeah, like, the Vegas way.
Yeah, like
just pull a Vegas. It's fine. You won't go to jail. You'll just, eventually get fined a lot of money.
So apparently,
do you think they'll give Mark Stone Spleen a ring of his own, or do you think that
I think Mark Stone's going to get traded in the offseason because the cap is fake and Vegas has no loyalty to literally anybody? So
the first captain in team history. Goodbye. See ya.
Is he? I thought no. Jason Garrison was the first captain in team history. I thought.
Was it him? I know. Was it Derek Engelland was a Vegas native and was playing there, but I don't think he was the captain. I want to say Mark Stone is the first one.
I'm actually going to look this up very quickly. Wearing the C. Mark Stone is the first one to wear a C. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people wearing A's in their inaugural season. And Ian, we're going to do my favorite thing in the world. We're going to play Do You Want to Remember Some Guys? Can you name me the 6 people who wore an A for the Vegas Golden Knights in their inaugural season?
So I feel like Derek Engelland was one of them. Is that correct? I believe he's a Vegas native, and that's why he was doing that.
Yeah, yes. Just by virtue of like being from Vegas. They're like, here, have a letter.
Right.
That is the first one.
I think Marchessault had to have had one.
Nope.
Marchessault didn't have one?
He did not.
Was it Carlson? Did he have one?
Nope.
Who played on that team? Not Canadiens legend Alexei Yemlin, because he actually never played, even though he was selected in the expansion draft.
He did not.
Oh my God! Did they give Fleury one?
No, they did not. You can't give a letter to a goalie in the NHL, unfortunately.
Not anymore.
Shameful. Riley Smith, did he have one?
That is 2.
They have 4
I named the third one a second ago.
Was it Jason Garrison?
Jason Garrison is 3.
I'm trying to think, because like I'm thinking I think I've guessed like all of the original Misfits that are still around.
Oh, there's one in the chat. No cheating, Ian. Close your eyes.
If Ian gets the last one, I'm gonna laugh.
Ball wasn't there.
Nope. The two of these players were bona fide NHLers that came over that were a very big deal immediately. One of which who is still playing in the NHL right now.
Wow.
There are 2 forwards and a defenseman left.
I can't think of any of them, honestly. I can't.
David Perron got an A.
Oh, David wow.
James Neal got an A. And my favorite one, which is how I know you were never going to finish this off, Lucas Spiza got an A for the Vegas Golden Knights in their inaugural season.
Congrats on being the first person all day to say that name. That's crazy.
That's I was going to say the next year they went to Riley Smith, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, Derek Engelland. Next year, Mark Stone, Max Pacioretty, Riley Smith, Derek Engelland. Then Stone got it, and Alex Pietrangelo joined the team, and they gave him an A. So Vegas is the funniest franchise in the world. So
Yeah.
I forgot
the
where
rules
we
don't
were.
apply to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Vegas does what they want. All right, we got a question. Do you think the Habs will try to bring back one of Toffoli or Monahan? Also, should they?
I can see Monahan. I think Toffoli's going to get there's going to be a team who's going to have the cap space, and he wanted apparently a 5 to 6 year extension in New Jersey. The Habs don't have the timeline for that, unfortunately. So,
Yes. Which is sad because I would have loved to bring him back.
I would love to bring Tyler Toffoli back to this team. I think, would be a perfect fit for the role they need in the middle six, but timelines don't match up. I could see Monahan coming back. If Kent Hughes were to bring Monahan back and trade him again for another first round pick, I would potentially be like, you need to be investigated for crimes.
Yeah.
Like how?
I feel like Sean Monahan is not going to take a 1-year deal at the end of all of this. I think he's proven to everybody that he can be trusted with a long-term deal. Like his health is not an issue anymore. Whether or not that will play out is another thing. To your point, I think Toffoli is going to get paid this year. I just think so many like you look at his hockey card and it's just trade. He's been traded so many times. And it's not because he's undesirable. It's quite the opposite. Like everybody wants Toffoli and then they get him and then the team stinks.
Yeah.
Like some team is going to give Toffoli like $6.5 million and it's probably going to be an underpay for what he'll be able to do for that team.
The cap's going up. That's when GMs spend a lot of stupid stuff.
Yeah.
All right, Laura, we got time for like 2 more before I got to hop out for AHL night.
I don't think we have that many questions left. Feel free to ask some. We've got a lot of comments. Like, did Edmonton really get Corey Perry, or did we dream that?
No, they did, and
Okay.
he's there.
Sure is.
So somebody mentioned the Corey Perry curse that they will lose in the finals. I mean, that's fine with me.
All right, so I'm going to ask a question then, because this is technically my podcast, and I can do whatever I want. Our podcast, comrades. What is with the trade deadline over and the teams being what they are, who is the funniest possible team to go out in round 1? Is it Vegas, who just decided the cap doesn't exist? Edmonton, because McDavid will demand a trade? Or is it again Toronto, who again tried something and it was the complete wrong thing?
It's always Toronto for me.
Always Toronto. Yeah, as soon as you start listing teams, like he's going to say Toronto, right? Because
of course I was going to say Toronto. It's going to be the funniest meltdowns to go, we've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, it just seems like there's a new person in charge, except there really isn't. It's Brendan Shanahan's show, right? And he just refuses to learn the right lessons from any of these things. I think it's going to be hilarious that Leafs fans hate Joel Edmondson's guts, and they're all going to have to root for his success. So
it's all hockey men, no matter how smart they seem, are still hockey men at the core. So well,
any parting thoughts, anybody?
The Rocket play in about 5 minutes, and it's throwback night with their jerseys and their ridiculous portraits on the big screen. Anthony Marcotte, who calls the games for BPM Sports, put up a portrait of Riley Kidney on the big screen, and it is fantastic stuff. It looks like they're all about to die on the Titanic.
Oh my god.
those Rocket throwback jerseys look incredible.
Am I the only one who is not
you
like
are the only one who doesn't like them?
I love a cream colored jersey. Sue me.
No, it's not that.
I love a cream colored jersey.
You can like both.
Okay, in fairness, the cream colored one was better. Was it last year or the year before?
The previous 2 years they did cream colored jerseys.
It is better, but I actually really like this one. Like Scott doesn't like it at all. He thinks it looks like a rugby jersey. I also feel like it looks a little bit like, the shirt that every guy in college wears. Like, yeah.
So hold on, let me get my can of Axe body spray, my Natty Light, put my hat this way, and I'm gonna put Avicii on in the hallway, and we're gonna listen to Levels 37 times.
And I'm gonna carry around a gallon of purified water. Yeah.
All right. On that note,
man, finance is a totally legit major. It's fine. It's fine, bro. No. My dad said we can use the boat this weekend. It's cool. It's after our tea time. I am projecting a lot of things here. So
just one comment. We do love the PWHL jerseys. We absolutely adore them. And speaking of the Laval Rocket, the PWHL also, PWHL Montreal
They
also
got to get
plays
names.
at Place Belle. I know they got to get names. Also play at Place Belle. And you got to go. You got to see them.
I
And
just
you
saw
gotta
them in Bridgeport in against New York this week.
How was it?
It was the hockey's awesome. Bridgeport has to figure out what Bridgeport's doing because there was
not
less than
doing well.
1,000 people there. Yeah, it was
Oh
not.
yeah, it's not.
When
It's
you
not
call
doing
it
the same thing the others are doing, eh?
when you call a team New York and you play out of Connecticut, it's just confusing and people don't want to go. So fix that. The product's great. I saw someone in the chat say that the road jersey for Montreal looks awesome. It sure does, especially when Mary Philip Plank scores. So I got to see that happen. So
It's awesome. So we want to thank everyone for joining us. I want to thank Ian so much. Ian, where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at maybe it's Ian. I'm on Blue Sky as well. And you can subscribe to the Build wherever you find podcasts. There's a new episode out today on the trade deadline recap.
Can't wait to go listen to that. And as for everybody else, I will be putting this episode up very shortly. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will talk to you on Monday morning. Bye, everybody.